I added up their points, you know, assuming that I got their settlement points right, which I am assuming. The columns added up correctly. My worry was that maybe I screwed something up on them. The transhumanists, look, this is horrible. The syndicate, this is horrible. Why are they so bad? They have decent influence even. Just feels like they're doing better. Oh wait, titles, they don't have any titles, and a lot of the people picked up good points off the titles. Now, obviously, you spend about half of those in influence points, right? You know, you have to spend around 10 IP, maybe a little less, to get the 10-point title. So there is that. Nobody picked up that Warlord title. I don't know if anybody was ever in a position late in the game where it would have been worth buying. 6 escalation markers. Obviously, they were at 6 for much of the game, but they have a couple of these. These guys were at 6 at some point and did not buy it. Probably assuming they could get something else. But at some point or another, they probably should have considered it. Just boost their points. But it would have only been like 5 points, you know. What does that cost? 10? 8? Okay. So, so 6 points. They would have had a 6-point edge from that. Which, you know, it makes a difference, but it doesn't actually give them a positional advantage. All right, well, get your settlements out and grow them. That's definitely, I think, for almost all the players, an important strategy. But at the same time, getting out there, if you have the ships, the right ships. Now, that's the thing. Some of the factions are different from others. The Praetorians here are actually not that different from the Starfarers. They have less bases, low ship count, low trade goods. Their production is a little better in tech. And we see they were rather low on, so their settlements, they got a total of 15 points from the bases. The Starfarers got 12, you know. Everyone else got over 30. But in both cases, I mean, look at these Starfarer ships. They're not big haulers. They're not good at getting settlers out there. They're good at exploring. That's their thing. And I feel like I kind of focused on that pretty heavily. Yes, they have a decent ship. And oh boy, there's a couple of colonists I could have, you know, dropped somewhere probably, well, no, I probably left Earth. But, you know, if this went another turn, those would be down. That would be another 2 points. Okay. It's not going to make much difference. Yeah. Keep an eye out for anomalies that give you advantages for the basis that you know you're settling on. Eventually, and maybe earlier on than I did, grab the 1-point things that give you population bonuses. Especially ones that give you kind of funky stuff in worlds that can't be terraformed, which is like the Earth-like moons, the J for gas giant, because giant, and I guess A's are asteroid belts. I don't know, because they're not arid. No, A's are volcanic because it's an upside down V with a line in it. I have no idea. Where's the asteroids are D, because asteroid ends in a D. Again, no idea there. Those are the three that can't be upgraded. If you have something that focuses on one of those and you're set up to colonize in them and whatnot, yeah, take advantage of that, I think. Those guys tend to have good victory points on them for their cost. And the settlement growth advantages are going to be really, really big. We had a fair amount of places where people were getting stifled, where their settlements couldn't grow anymore, even in a game that ended fairly shortly. And I was trying to figure out how to ship people out of there and whatnot. Serious text that didn't get taken at all. This one, cheaper settlements on Earth, allows you, it's a great thing, but it's like late in the game, you may not be be able to get that much advantage out of it. And anytime you're buying settlers, you're spending victory points for a couple of turns while you set them out. Eventually you'll get a good multiplier, but again, you don't know when the game's going to end. So another real randomness that's just thrown in there. Your settlers that are, going out to location. Look, you get points back for your tech and your money. Okay, so if you were stupid, if you had an oracle that told you when the game was going to end, you could play this to optimize what was going to happen and not build ships or whatever. As it works out, it's just kind of a matter of luck. Are you set up in a position where you have enough money to buy the ship you want and the settlers you need and everything to send them out? Nah, okay, I'll hold the money for a turn. Oh, look, now that's worth a couple extra victory points. A couple of victory points, not big in the light of things. We see there's a fair amount of space between everyone, so it's not like that money on the ships or whatever, the excess money really made much difference in terms of positioning. I don't see anyone who was close enough that like excess tech and money would have made a difference. But you know what? Excess settlers that are going out, I would kind of say throw a pool together, right? Tech, money, and maybe twice the number of settlers that you have on ships. As sort of these are resources that are going to be valuable to you to some extent or another, but you're not getting anything for it. What about ships themselves? Again, you could buy a ship on the last turn of the game, and that's cost you maybe a couple of victory points, and you're not getting anything back for it. Again, probably not that big a deal. The big deal is really the settlements and the exploration side of things, I would say. Although this is not a completely now the word isn't there. I want to say something that starts with in but means unvaluable. And I can't find the word in my head. The price of getting old and senile. Anyway, I did have fun, but the game outlasted its welcome to a large extent, mainly because of the complexity that came out across. As the game state just started bloating to such a size. And again, that GMT game, I can't remember what it's called. It's by Balkowski, I think. Just did not, I had the same kind of situation, but that one changed the rules, like between sections. First you're exploring the solar system. That's great. Then you're exploring the near Earth stars or something like that. Maybe not even that far. And that started getting a little too complex, and then it just bloated into something where the decision-making process was really horrendous. This one, I feel like I can use heuristics. I can use I can use things to sort of short-circuit my decision-making, but I don't know what the value of them is. And I had absolutely no idea what the scores were going to turn out. I certainly didn't think the Starfarers were going to be in, what, third place? Which, you know, and 20 points ahead of fourth place. That just, but why? Well, a big part of it was these directives. Again, we had 20 to them. They're at just 100. Everybody's kind of a little above 100. And the real question is, you know, would that change the winner? And I don't think it would. 80-something, 100. And this guy actually wouldn't be doing very well, even if he got his back. 113. Yeah, I think certainly the givers would still be the winners if you just cancel the directives out of it. So it's not that big a deal, but the penalties and how hard they hit the people who just couldn't get the directives they wanted. But let's look. Who's in trouble? The transhumanists and the syndicate took the worst. The transhumanists didn't get any. They were sitting on a trade two goods to Earth. They had a fine art sitting there for a lot of the game, but they just couldn't draw an ore or anything else that they could deliver. Some people were sitting for a long time not delivering stuff because they wanted the title. You could argue either way on that. What about our other one that failed completely? Sell 2 trade goods on Earth. Who would think that's hard? But it's a matter of what you draw here, right? Nobody was delivering things they could deliver on Earth somewhere else when they had a directive in hand. And that's 2 players who were sitting on what looked like easy directives, but really turned out much harder than I thought they would be. Whereas other people solved that directive relatively easily. So I don't know. Here, sell a rare material on Earth. You know, that should be harder. But, yeah, because there are more ores than there are fine art or rare materials. Anyway, let's send this up. Not going to do the review until God knows when, sometime after dancing. No earlier than Sunday, I would guess. Because I got to clean this shit up. It's going to take a while to put this all away and get it bagged. A lot of sorting and everything. But, yeah. For a preliminary, what I thought from very early on, I like being able to play the Stellar Horizons like system again. But I would rather play the first one than this one by far. This one, too much game state, too much complexity to a system, you know, and I don't believe the system works as well on this one to begin with. Certain ideas like the movement, you know, these stupid counters, so much more annoying than the tracks in the first one, and add to the clutter. Little things like, you know, that you're actually able to go faster than light, even though very much you're not supposed to be able to. Even at a movement allowance of 1, a multiplier of 1, you don't even have to get to the 0.5 to find cases where you're going faster than light. The things that were added to the game, the anomalies are cool, but again, they add to the clutter. The trade system, I don't feel like it really works very well. One of the biggest things, though, is just this 2-dimensional board that's, you know, got so many more things on it, you know, in terms of locations, right? And then so much shit that has to go into a small space on it. The first game was kind of funny because it takes up so much space on the table, and it's so long in terms of like, how many planets there are in a row. But it gave you a capability to possibly play on multiple tables with space between them, things like that if you wanted to. You had a lot of options with that. This one, you really have to put this whole board together. It's too crowded, and I really do feel like most of the stuff that got added to it is just kind of adding to the confusion of too much game state being present. I don't remember if there were cards like this. I don't think there were in the original. I think there was the tech chart, which was hard enough for me. But like all the stuff that you have, the special abilities and everything, it adds up. Another thing, this applies to both, that kind of irks me a little bit, is the inability to kind of control your fleet more than you do. I understand the idea that, the focus of the consortium is shipping, so they should have bigger shipping ships. It would feel kind of better if players could construct their own type of ships. I'm thinking here kind of like a Starfire 3 type of thing, where you're researching different aspects, or SE4X, the Space Empires, where you research different things and you basically get to design your own faction, as you were. Take an advantage choose advantages for the factions, or maybe have advantages baked in. But then you choose your ships based on that. Of course, there's an advantage to being able to print the ships as specific types. The other thing would be, I should be able, if I like a particular size ship, I should be able to build more of that, not have to go to bigger ships, that are too expensive for my capabilities, because I found myself running out of money and not being able to pump the settlers out at the optimal rate. And I also found myself keeping crappier or older, smaller ships simply because I liked them better, than some of the better stuff that I was getting the tech to be able to do. Anyway, overall, some of that stuff applies to both of the games in the system, especially about the ships and whatnot. But again, I had my fun with it. I just think the original was a better game, which I'm sure I'll get to when I go into the review. But we go into more depth. We look at the rules and talk about them more. Too many bags needed on this one, too. I have to say the results were a little surprising. What happens? Oh, that definitely doesn't help. But if I stand at this angle, that introduces stuff. So yeah, we got the leader was the Givers at 107. Now they have a decent amount of settlement points. In fact, the top on the board, and moderate penalties for directives and tech. Next was the True Path at 100.5. Again, a fair amount of settlement points, not as high as the Syndicate got. And why are they so bad? Well, there's the Syndicate. They're so bad because they failed at all their directives. The directives, which are an optional rule, are a huge source of, I think, random penalty in the game. At 15 points per missed one, and that's the thing. The True Path managed to fulfill most of their requirements. Just because the ones they got, they were able to deal with. Production is actually relatively easy. We got people holding trade good ones that they haven't been able to play because they just haven't been able to produce the stuff and ship it just by the randomness of drawing trade goods. Obviously, people who got screwed out of anomalies or survey ones, blue is ranging, the Starfarers are ranging on not being able to get any more, to succeed at any more of them, even in a longer game. So that minus 22, sure, it might go up if I fulfill some directives that aren't my goal, but that big negative 15 per, you got to push harder at directives than I did, and maybe throw ones away that aren't in your requirements, even if they look like they could be handled. Like I looked at the trade ones, drop 2 trade goods off at Earth. Well, we're about to, everybody was about to do it eventually, but it took a long fucking time to gather that many trade points. The interesting thing was third place went to the Starfarers at 81.5. And what did they get them off of? A lot off of influence, of all things, not much off of settlements. They ended up with like 12 points off settlements only. Their big point gain was the influence, but they also didn't take as big a hit as many of the players did with the directives. If we add the negative points for directives here, we're looking at over 100 here, obviously. Over 100 here, 88.5 here. Over 100, over 100, and obviously over 100 again, which is to just say that the penalty for the directives is exceedingly harsh given everything. You'd think that, like, if you focused as much as I did, you would actually get the directives. Now, in terms of points, well, to get the high score, you need 300 or more. That could just be an incredibly long game, right? I certainly feel like the competitive bonuses are not unreasonable in terms of the points that they give to put you in here. I don't know how balanced it is. It all kind of depends, because everybody could kind of work together and make it almost a cooperative game, even if it's not. Because there's still stuff that you compete with each other in a competitive game. Somebody could sleaze into a system that you're in, and you've got nothing you can do about it. Or in a cooperative game, somebody could sleaze into a system, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't go blow them up or anything. The only thing you can really do is leave the system, and they might have advantages like flying or something that make that system really valuable to them, but not to you. And that comes down to, hey, did you draw that important card at an important time and have the points, we're able to save up the points for it. I definitely think that getting your settlements out there even early and even not necessarily as far out as you can looks like a strong strategy. For the most part, it's people who threw a lot of settlers into play and got, let's look. The top settler point got the win. The next best, the syndicate, came in very, very poorly in third from last place. But that's because of their stupid directives. Again, this would be a fairly tight game without the directives. I'm beginning to question, they may be too unbalanced a facet. That may be why they're optional. The titles, I don't feel like they're unbalanced. They don't give you that many points. You have to spend IPs for them. They give you some neat little bonuses, but for the most part, I feel like the problem with the titles is adding to the game state in terms of what you have to deal with. I like the idea of the directives a lot, but I don't think that I feel like they're too random an aspect towards that final scoring. Now, if you played with directives without the penalty for them, or maybe a small bonus for getting the types that you're supposed to get, like maybe a 5-point bonus, or maybe a 5-point penalty for not getting. Yeah, I think that 15-point penalty is just too harsh, especially for something that's an optional rule. They definitely feel very, very painful. And again, if we get rid of them, that penalty, we're still not looking at very high scores, right? But the game wasn't very long. There really should be a modifier in there for the length of the game. What we're looking at is at the highest score 107, which would rate recruit. And if we added his 24 here, he would be at, although he'd actually have more, but if we weren't playing with directives at all, he would be at 131, which would put him up one level to lieutenant, which doesn't look very good. At least it's not galactic scum. In fact, nobody made that. Even the syndicate didn't get that low. And a big surprise for me that the Starfarers were able to do as well as they were. If they had been able to settle to kind of a normal extent, we can look. But actually, their settlements are at about the same level as the Praetorians, who faced no real opposition and no real attacks. They just didn't push a lot of settlers out. They had 2 bases. I think they got hit once. But yeah, they did not focus on pushing their settlers out. And that put them, you know, in that bottom portion of the scoring. Oh, whoa. The consortium actually did worse than the syndicate. And the transhumans did worse. Transhumans totally failed on their directives. Why is the consortium so bad? They have decent settlement points, but not on the very high end. See, they went with a strategy that was very much like the Givers, building a couple of big settlements here. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't manage to get a big settlement out here. They tried to go out here and punch one, you know, three hexes away, which is kind of the best case. I wonder if I misadded for them. Let me just make sure, because it feels like they should be doing better than that. I guess all that's left is to add it up. The final thing in all of this is the fudge factor for the number of players, which is plus 40 in the case of a 7-player game. But again, I find this so ridiculous. If the game goes long, you're going to score a lot more points. And if the game ends short, which I feel it kind of did, you're going to score a lot less. So, you know, just saying there were more players competing with you, there really should be something based on the number of turns. You know, like minus 1 point per turn over the 2,500 or something along those lines. I don't know what it should be, but in order to compare your performance between games, when the game is ending randomly on a die roll, you know, there was only what, a 5% chance, 6% chance that 5% chance that it end that turn. You know, of course, the cumulative, we could, it is below the summation. So 3, 6, 10, 15. It's below a 15% chance that it would end on that turn. I don't know how much below, somewhere between, you know, like 12 and 15%, I'm thinking. I don't feel like doing probabilities right now. I think I gotta swap batteries. It would make a lot of difference. It's like a 1 point variance for you know, anyone, because if you've got excess, right? Yeah. If you've got 9 excess tech points and 9 excess money, well, that adds up to 18, which would then truncate to 1 point. Really thinking, because the tech points and the cash are both sets of 10, it kind of makes sense to just add them together and make it one score for just sort of unused resources, but not how it's worded and not what I'm doing. Points, you don't retain the fractions there, nor do you with cash. They're with the which would really suck if you like just built a ship and it didn't get to do anything and cost you like 20 billion, plus settlers that aren't in a settlement, because you don't get points for settlers that are just on the ship heading out. So there's a lot of, hey, if this had gone another turn, a lot of points would have been scored, you know, that I've denied, right? But the tech points are kind of an indication of, hey, you kind of screwed up, you know, you could have probably bought some tech or some cards or something and gotten yourself some points. Hoarding them's not a good idea, but hoarding them because you can do better on another turn might well make sense. Influence markers, yeah, they add up, man. I had talked to you about the Starfarers having a big hoard of points there. It's beginning to look like a bigger pile than I expected. Now, they got attacked a lot early when it really hurts. It'd be better to be attacked later, you know, if it's going to happen. And there was more warfare as we went later on, but they got picked on early and got knocked into the Stone Age by it. But that, in conjunction with like all the surveying they did, a lot of anomalies that they found, points that they got for resolving anomalies, etc. Got them a decent amount of points, to be honest. Surveys, remember, they're worth 1 point plus an IP each, so 1.5 points each when it comes to it. But you can see that's not producing a lot of points. Escalation is, surprisingly, so the Praetorians with their big hoard of victory points here. Now they lose 2 for the 2 damaged ones, which is why I overwrote. It says with a negative effect, red. What I didn't realize is it's the background that's red, not the text on them, which is why I didn't subtract. I thought those were 2 positives. Only 1 person got a penalty for this at the consortium, who have not been terribly violent. Remember, every 5 points at a single location is worth another victory point. Doesn't make up for the distance value, but sometimes it's easier to get a lot of settlers to a single location. The multiplier can be really, really important. The whole, hey, get as far from Earth as you can with your bases, with your settlers, because you know it adds up real fast. And the Syndicate had some far out bases, which got them a decent amount of points. Actually, nobody's too far away, right? All of these are within 2. Or 1 or whatever. And all the big bases here are within 2. But we got a couple bases out here, well, maybe 1, this one, out at the 3 range where they get a 1.5 multiplier, which starts helping a little bit. Also, I scored the largest base on this line as well, because I know where that is at this point. It's the transhuman big 20-point base. I have to worry about half points, which I marked with this. If you're, you know, an odd number of spaces from Earth with an odd-sized base, you create half points. Funny, somebody dropped a base just to sell something. I don't remember exactly where it was. I don't remember where they did it. And that's going to turn out to be advantageous. Just sort of a, hey, the game ended on this turn at random. You know, a base I was planning on picking up later or something. I don't even know. I can't find it. I thought it was just like a 1-point base. It might have been this 4-pointer here. I feel like it was on this side of the board. But somebody dropped something off. They dropped the base off and then they sold something and then they moved on. And I'm not seeing it anymore. Maybe I ate it. But yeah, it was really an iffy choice. I thought it was green here. But their bases are all relatively large. I don't know. Hopefully I'll count it if I don't find it. Using a second die much better score here for the givers. A second die to record the number of sets of 5 at any basis. So that's here. As I generate points, I'm recording them on the dice. I don't have a calculator that I trust to keep numbers on anymore. And writing it down, yeah, it would work on a scrap, but I might as well use dice for it, I guess. What I'm doing for this is I'm scanning as I would the board. I find there's 2 Praetorian bases and that's it. That feels way small. But I can't find any others. And yeah, so I figure they're both distance 1 from the Earth. Now remember, they have a really limited kind of capacity for this, and I think this is where most of the points are going to show up. We'll take a look in a little bit. But, you know, they only have like 21 settlers total out there. That means, wow. Certainly wasn't their focus. Their ships aren't designed for it, and a lot of other things, but I don't know if their combat capabilities make up for this. Now we come to stuff that's going to be hard to deal with. Whoever has the largest single base, yeah, that's going to be easy to see. But the large base bonus, that's +5 for each full set of 5 at each base. And then this is going to be half the distance from Seoul per settler, which is going to be a painful thing to calculate. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do this. I think I have to do it on a per player basis, but I'm worried that I'll miss settlements entirely. The cards and the tech. For the cards, what's kind of interesting is that I don't know, people have a lot of cards, most of them. There's some variance in the points. Obviously, he did very poorly. Everyone else ranging between 20 and 30. But then the tech they didn't get pretty much neutralized whatever points they got from the cards. So again, we're sticking in the 0 or negative territory, I think, for everyone after these 4 have been recorded. Obviously, though, the longer the game goes, the more points you get for cards, the less penalty for tech. The thing about all this is I felt like I was focusing very heavily on getting the directives out of the way, right? And the titles. But, you know, the directives, I was incredibly, you know, trying to work towards them as much as possible. Now, you can buy them off with an IP if you're not getting the ones you like. But it was really, it's really funny, you know, in the course of the 500 years, 400 years, 450 that I played, most people were not able to get very many of them at all. And it just, you know, it felt like, yeah, if I pay, I might get a better choice out of the 2 that I pick. But I might not. They're kind of hard. They're hard to resolve no matter what. So they're a big penalty. And I would say they probably come out negative in many, many games. Off to a great start. Oh boy, is the glow showing here. People getting their points for titles, those are only 10 points each. But everybody got negative points for their directives. The True Path, who only needs 3 total and got 2 production ones, we had a 3rd one in line. If only bases had come up again. It comes the closest at -8. The Syndicate needed 4 combat or trade. They had none of them, -60. The Transhumanists, worse than that. They needed 5 of any type. They didn't get anything. Wow. Off to a roaring good start. Well, it's been a hell of a long journey through this game, especially in terms of total video and, you know, life story shit and whatever that's come out during it. Starting to set up my scoring sheet. All 7 powers across the line, and I'm just going to do each line, figure out who's got what for each one. And we'll come back and chatter about that in a little bit.